Welcome back to our Teach Out on Hurricanes. This is an update on Tuesday, September 11th, 2018, as we're facing a number of hurricanes approaching the east coast of the United States. These include Hurricane Helene, Isaac, and Florence here in a row. Now, Helene seems it's going to go off to the north and not affect the east coast of the United States. But both Florence and Isaac hold potential for causing some precipitation and potentially hurricane force winds later in the week. So we'd like to explore a bit about what's going to be happening with these storms. Right now, the hurricane is in fact located Hurricane Florence is located just off the east coast of Florida, out beyond the Bahamas, and we'll be watching that storm. We can see the counterclockwise rotation around the storm at this hour, and we expect that storm is going to be tracking towards the North Carolina area. Our expectation here is that the path of highest wind speeds is going to track very much towards North Carolina. This is a map showing the probability of hurricane force winds. You can see that the probabilities are certainly high out here over the ocean. As it gets closer to land here, we expect it to maintain the high probability of being hurricane force winds. Now, I must tell you that with this particular storm, the hurricane force winds are certainly of concern. And with that storm surge, the water being moved on shore by the winds blowing on shore. But on top of that, this storm has the potential to stagnate once it gets into and close to the shoreline here. Now, if I go back to this animation, you'll see where the storm is. I'm going to move forward in time with this so we can see over time as the storm moves closer. This is now Wednesday afternoon of this week, Thursday afternoon. The forecast is sometime on Thursday, this storm will start approaching the shoreline in North Carolina. Because of the counterclockwise flow, we're particularly interested in the flows that are going to be happening to the north here. These will be the winds blowing water onshore. So that produces a storm surge which can raise the water levels. And on top of that, we have to be worried both about the winds blowing onshore and tides. As the storm comes onshore, the tides, as we'll see in a moment, are likely to happen at noon and at midnight, and depending on the timing of the storm, that would add extra storm surge in this particular case. This is a map of rainfall potential currently from NOAA, and you can see that the rainfall potential is quite large. Purple colors here are greater than 15 inches of precipitation. Dark purple is over 20 inches of precipitation. Here right along, here's the outer banks of North Carolina, down by Topsail, and going in towards central North Carolina is going to be some torrential rain here, and it looks like even into Virginia, the potential for large amounts of precipitation occur. And the reason for that goes back to this image. If we go now forward in this, here it's approaching shore on Thursday, and I watch on Friday. By Friday, the storm is now onshore. You can see the blowing right onshore here in the Outer Banks. And we're looking at different models now. This is the model called the GFS model. I can go over here and also show you that at the same time a different model, European model, which tends to maybe be a bit more accurate with these hurricanes. It's got the storm a little bit further south. Nonetheless, the coastline of North Carolina here is in high risk during this time. Now, as we move forward, I'm going to go back to the GFS model for illustration. If we go forward then to later in the week, Saturday afternoon, you can see the storm is now kind of staying there. It's just hanging out along the coast of the Carolinas, and it's bringing this moisture on shore. This is what's going to potentially produce the extended amounts of precipitation. As the storm then kind of maybe dallies around, even stays along the coast, again, it still has access to the moisture in the ocean, which is potential then for extra precipitation. And going forward, even into next week here, into Monday or so, the storm finally moves onshore, but it's still over North Carolina. So for an extended period of time, this storm's going to sit there. And much like Hurricane Matthew a few years ago, the storm surge, the high winds are an issue, but it's more the precipitation and the flooding that are going to be the greatest concern in this case. Right now, this is a map, best we can, of soil moistures. How saturated is the ground at the moment? And green indicates the ground is fairly saturated. So in Pennsylvania down through Virginia here and into North Carolina, there are spots of green. So the ground is not dry. It's not going to have a whole lot of capacity to absorb much more precipitation. And on top of that, we can look at stream flows. Here's stream flow rates in North Carolina. The dark colors are where the stream flow is at 90% of capacity already. Not so much out here where the rain is going to fall most, but as the more rain falls as it gets inland, if it gets towards the mountains there's also going to be great potential for flooding in the mountains of not only North Carolina, but also up in Virginia, where the rivers along the Appalachians here, the Blue Ridge, are certainly already near capacity. So we have a great potential here for flooding, not only in North Carolina, but potentially also in South Carolina and in Virginia. And that's obviously a cause for great concern. With the storm surge coming on shore, you've got the air blowing in a counterclockwise way around the storm, moving that water on shore. If it happens again in coincidence with high tides, then you can get great amounts of flooding. And because of the nature of the shoreline down there, a lot of that flooding is going to happen along the rivers here, Greenville and Kingston area, potentially some very, very big flooding in there just due to the storm surge. Add to that the extra precipitation of 15 to 20 inches, and you've got some great potential here for damage. And if you live in those areas, obviously you would want to be doing what you can to protect your house and then get yourself into a place where you're safe. Tides are going to be changing over time here. I was looking forward to a Thursday or so. The tides hit their peaks about noon and at midnight, so that'll be the worst time for the storm surge. That, in combination with the high winds coming on shore, will make this particularly dangerous storm. Here are just pictures from back in Hurricane Matthew to remind you how this happens with a high precipitation and a hurricane. This is Hurricane Matthew, and this is Princeville, North Carolina. Just to put this in perspective, Princeville is in this area here. You can see here's the before and then during the flooding. You can see how the water here is just overtaking these buildings and the streets, and that's a potential again here for this storm. Likewise here in the Greenville airport, the whole runway was underwater. In fact, back at Hurricane Matthew, we're facing another similar, maybe even worse situation here with Hurricane Florence. So if you're in this North Carolina area or the other areas we've talked about, it's important that you prepare. The ready.gov site is a good source for that. Check that out. It's got information about how you can prepare for the storm and information about what to do after the storm if you need extra help. Also, we encourage you to share this video with others who may be affected by the storm or interested in this hurricane set. And it's also important to point out that we are recording this on Tuesday, September 11th. Things will change, so you want to stay up to date and visit some of the sites we've looked at today to see how forecasts are changing over time and how that might affect your area. I appreciate your interest. This again is an update on our teach outs, and I hope that you stay safe and get through this. Good luck.